The sun had fallen low, pressing long shadows across the plains like the stretched fingers of ghosts. A hush had overtaken the land, the kind of silence that came not from peace, but the kind that grew out of something terrible having happened. Dust rose from a pair of battered boots dragging across the dirt, their rhythm broken and limping. Each step brought a sharp breath, shallow and hissed through clenched teeth. The woman walked alone, her dress torn at the shoulder, dried blood darkening the fabric across her ribs. Her arms hung heavy, her hair tangled like forgotten rope, her eyes flicking left and right as though trying to outrun memory. She wasn't sure how far she'd come since slipping out of that barn. Time had collapsed on itself somewhere between the laughter and the pain, somewhere between the snap of bone and the quiet that followed. They hadn't even shouted when they did it. They just grinned like boys tossing stones into a creek. Like it was sport. Like she didn't have a name. Her mouth was cracked from thirst. Her ribs screamed with each breath. And still she walked. A hawk circled above, wide and lazy. She raised her eyes to it, and for a moment envied its wings. But envy was a luxury. Survival was all she had room for. Her knees buckled, and she sank to the ground beside a rusted fence post, the prairie grass whispering secrets as the wind slid through. She curled forward, arms wrapped around her sides like she could hold herself together with just pressure. A dry sob escaped her lips, followed by a broken murmur that no one heard but the sky. If I die out here, let the stars be kinder than the men were. The wind shifted. Hoofbeats. Slow, deliberate. She didn't raise her head at first. Couldn't. Then a shadow stretched beside her. Tall, calm, without sharpness. A horse snorted softly. Leather creaked. And then, a man's voice. Low, edged with weather. You all right, miss? Her head turned, just enough to see the boots beside her. Dusty but cared for, spurs still, not jangled. She forced her eyes upward. The figure standing above her wasn't young, but neither was he old. His face was quiet. Not cold, just quiet. The kind of quiet that came from spending too many years watching the world fall apart in slow motion. His hat shadowed his eyes, but she could feel them. Not staring. Not feasting. Just looking. Like she was a person. She tried to speak but coughed instead, doubling forward. He knelt. No sudden movement. Just one knee in the dirt, the way you might lower yourself before a hurt animal. Not afraid, not assuming, just present. I got a cabin 2 miles east. Water. Fire. Bandages. Mules slow, but steady. You ride, I'll walk. Her lips parted, unsure if the trembling in her chest was pain or disbelief. Why? He didn't answer. Just held out a calloused hand. The decision took a long moment. She stared at it. The hand was rough. Not a stranger to work or weather. But it was open. Not grabbing. Not pulling. Open like a question. Like a promise. Finally, her fingers moved toward it, trembling, blood under her nails. He helped her stand. She cried out. Her ribs stabbed like knives beneath her skin. He caught her before she fell, arms careful around her shoulders. Not too tight. Not too loose. Like he'd done this before. She didn't ask his name. He didn't ask hers. They moved slow, the mule's ears flicking against the dying light. The plains fell behind them like a memory they agreed not to revisit. The wind softened as they neared the hills, and there, nestled against a line of bare cottonwoods, stood a cabin of crooked timbers and patient smoke. It wasn't pretty, but it looked like it had stood through storms. He helped her down, his hands never wandering. She half collapsed against the doorway, but he caught her again, lifting her this time without a word. She was light, but not from delicacy. From loss. From not having eaten in 2 days. From letting go. The inside of the cabin smelled like pine sap, leather oil, and something warm on the stove. He laid her on a cot near the hearth. She curled to one side instinctively. A strangled sound escaped her throat. He watched, brow furrowing. You got broke ribs. The words weren't cruel. Just fact. She closed her eyes. Didn't answer. He went to a shelf, pulled down a tin box. Opened it like it was sacred. Inside were strips of cloth, a clean rag, and a jar of something golden. He scooped a bit and warmed it by the fire, then gently lifted the hem of her dress. She tensed. I ain't gonna do nothin' wrong. She didn't relax. But she didn't stop him either. His fingers were steady. He smeared the salve over the bruising with reverence, not pity. As if her pain deserved to be seen, not pitied. Then he wrapped her ribs with practiced hands. You done this before. His voice was gravel and wind. My boy fell from a ladder once. His mama was gone by then. Someone had to learn. She turned her face away. Later, she woke to the sound of rain. Gentle on the roof, tapping like fingers trying to come home. He sat by the fire, carving something from a block of wood. A horse, maybe. Or a deer. The shadows danced across his face. He didn't speak. Just glanced over, nodded once, then returned to his carving. She tried to sit up and hissed. The pain stole her breath. A spoon appeared beside her mouth. Broth. Got onions in it. Nothin' fancy. She drank. Salt and heat filled the cracks inside her. For a long while, neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. The next morning, she sat in the sun just outside the door, a blanket over her shoulders. He watered the mule, fed the chickens, whistled low and off-key. She watched him. Not because he was remarkable, but because he wasn't. That night, she asked the question she hadn't dared ask before. Why'd you help me? He didn't answer at first. Just stared at the fire. I seen men do ugly things. I seen folks turn their heads and call it none of their business. I made up my mind long time ago. If kindness don't live in me, then I ain't worth the name man. She looked down at her hands. Dirty. Cut. Still shaking. You don't even know what they did. He met her eyes. Don't need to. Pain talks. Don't matter the words. She stared at him then. Truly saw him. Not just a man with quiet eyes and steady hands. But a place. A place no one had shouted in for years. A place no one had broken anything just to hear the sound. The pain didn't stop that night. Or the next. Healing wasn't like in stories. It came slow. Ugly. Uneven. Some mornings she cried just from sitting up. Some nights she bit the inside of her cheek to stop from screaming. But he was always there. Not hovering. Just near. He fixed the roof. Repaired a fence. Read from an old leather book by lantern light. Once, she asked what it was. Psalms, mostly. But I don't read 'em for God. I read 'em 'cause they don't rush. She smiled. Barely. When she was strong enough to walk again, he didn't cheer or praise. Just handed her a walking stick he'd carved with care. Little by little, she helped him. Brushing the mule. Hanging wet shirts to dry. Stirring the stew. Not because he asked. Because she wanted to know what it felt like to be part of something that didn't hurt. Then came the day when hoofbeats returned. She knew the sound. Sharp. Laughing. Her body froze. He saw it before she said a word. One rider. That's him. He didn't reach for a rifle. Just walked outside, steady as sunrise. The man on the horse sneered. Well, look who's still breathin'. Thought maybe I'd find you crawlin' again. She stood behind the door, fists clenched. The cowboy didn't move. You done enough damage. She's got a name now. She's got peace. You turn round and ride, or I make you part of the dust. The man spat. You her new husband or something? Got yourself a used up. The cowboy stepped forward. The rider saw something then. Not violence. But depth. The kind of silence that made a man unsure of his own strength. You don't get to speak 'bout her no more. A beat. The horse turned. The rider left. Inside the cabin, her hands wouldn't stop shaking. He came in quiet. Looked at her, not with pride or comfort. Just truth. You ain't what they did. You're what you lived through. She didn't cry. Not then. She just nodded. Like a gate opening. And in that moment, something shifted. Not between them. Inside her. Something had survived.